Welcome, everyone. I'm Sean Payne, owner and founder of Live Explore Lifestyle, and today we are at the Housing Signal podcast. I have my co-host with me, Isaiah Chass. Isaiah.
Welcome. Absolutely. Thanks for being here, Ivan.
And we have a really cool guest with us today, Ivan O'Neill of Madronus. It was kind of really cool how this came about because I'd seen a couple emails about Madronus and fire hardening, insurance. Obviously, being in real estate, it's really topical right now, right?
Right.
And so, been looking for resources, and then saw a couple emails come around, and I was like, hey, that would be a cool podcast, and just shot it out there, and then you got right back to us, and which is again like really beneficial because we're talking about this stuff all the time, trying to put it together with all the things that are going on with the insurance industry. We have clients that are calling us on a weekly basis that are losing their insurance policies. In fact, right before you got here, about like 5 minutes before you got here, I had an agent just had that conversation with another agent on another property. Yeah, it's just really great to have you here and to hear about what you guys are about because we need resources like this. So, what's Madronus?
Yeah, well, thanks for reaching out and having me on here. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Madronus Wildfire Defense. We got started a little over 2 years ago, focused on how do we make it simple for property owners, insurers to reduce wildfire risk. And so we pair that with an inspection to get people started, set the ground rules. We look at all the latest science and research about how homes burn in wildfires and incorporate what the insurance industry is looking for as part of the new rules that are rolling out.
Right.
And then we pair that with the contractor network and really offer other services to help people get it done quickly.
Cool. When we do these podcasts, sometimes we always put together some questions, and we did that for this. But I'm gonna totally go off script because I'm just kind of interested in this right now. So you what industry did you come from? How did you see that? I mean, obviously there's fires around us, right? But like what gave you the idea that way?
Yeah. What's the origin story, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I was living in San Francisco. I've lived in California most of my life. I grew up in Washington State. My family is from California, and I moved to the Bay Area in 2012 and was working in smart home security.
Oh, okay.
For a tech startup that had a platform used by many of the largest companies in North America, ADT, Comcast. And in 2017, we exited. I was working for the new megacorp, and it was going well, but that was right when Tubbs Fire hit. And then next year we saw the Camp Fire destroy Paradise, and then it just never let up. And as I've always been someone interested in climate change and kind of what we could do to stop that, and started doing research. And along the way, I met my co-founder, Aaron Betcher. He's a really bright geospatial data scientist and comes at it from kind of the forestry and the big landscape scale background. And together, we hatched this idea for all of us going through 2020 with the orange skies and everything. Just really felt like this was something that really needed to be tackled. And for him, all of his family members used to live in Paradise. The house his sister grew up in was destroyed in that fire. So fortunately, they had moved the year before, but they had been through many evacuations. And so what needs to change and how are we going to adapt to this new reality was really the focus for the company.
Right. Awesome. That's a very unfortunate what happened up in Paradise, but it's really cool that you're kind of like, I was assuming you were within the industry or something like that, but you just kind of like a fresh set of eyes said like, hey, something needs to be done here that way.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Can you walk us through like the site assessment process then? What elements do you guys evaluate? What's the magic sauce in this? Tell us about it.
So it's a 50-point inspection type of service. So we'll come out, meet with the homeowner, and go over a little bit of the basic science and the types of things that we look at. We're doing everything from the top to the bottom. So primarily focused on the exterior of the house. So roofs, gutters, the eaves underneath the roof, all the vents on the building, so attic, crawl space, dryer, and other vents. We'll look at all the doors, the windows, the siding, and any attached decks or accessory structures, sheds, things like that. And then we start moving outward from there. So the latest science has shown how important it is to maintain a very clean area right next to the house within the first 5 feet. They're calling that the new zone 0, and that needs to be completely non-combustible. So it's a big shift from kind of what we're used to seeing in our landscape design, but it doesn't mean that everything has to be a moonscape. And then out from there, we go out to about 100 feet from the property. So we're looking at the trees, the shrubs, the grass, any mulches and things on the ground. And there's a few other things too, but that's where we focus.
Right.
And I think so many people, you don't even think about it, but they're fences.
Mm-hmm.
The wood fence goes right up to the house, and that's a candle wick for fire to come straight in.
You got it. That's a big way that homes have been burning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, again, like as it's become more topical in our office, I've been looking at like the fire hardening standards, and again, I'm not an expert on it. I know there's the Sonoma County has some recommendations that way, and then there's a couple organizations that also have various recommendations too. But like looking around my house, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I need to take that bush out. I have a tarp attached to my house of overhang for shade, which, is a fire starter. Like there was so many things, the fence, going right up. I was like, I need to replace this with a metal, this portion of the fence with a metal fence. I mean, there's so many things, sheds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many people buy like wooden sheds? And I think like one of the standards I saw was like 25 or 30 feet. If it's not metal, it should be 25 or 30 feet from homes that way. And I was like, holy cow, I'm in the industry and I'm like, I'm this thing's gonna go up in flames here. Like this is not safe at all. So yeah.
We have a joke, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I try not to be that person at the cocktail party judging somebody's house when I come up, but it's once you start to see the videos about this stuff, it's really hard not to spot it when you're driving around neighborhoods. And, yeah, we keep all of our flammable paints and lubricants and all the stuff that in the sheds that you don't want in the house, and so those can be what they call fuel jackpots in a fire.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things like that you just don't realize.
Mm-hmm. So you had the in-person 50-point inspection, but even before that, you can do an online assessment. I know we were both playing around with it, plug in addresses, and it would give us a risk score and all sorts of analysis based on just an online analysis. Can you walk us through how that works? I'm sure some sort of artificial intelligence is built into that.
Yes. So we created this risk score early on. It was a model for looking at the vegetation and density at kind of the regional scale as well as the community scale, and then zooming down in on the property levels. So what did we notice about the year that the house was built and what the building codes were at that time? We can make some general assumptions. And then looking at kind of the density of the neighborhood and how close you are to the next neighboring house. And then also looking at how much vegetation is around that area and sort of what kind of condition is it in. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a good starting point, I think, to give folks an understanding of their risk and to have a conversation, and then to take the next step of giving us a phone call, and we'll always talk to people, for 15 minutes, no problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And just like this is kind of like a side note, and you're gonna know more about this than I am, but like the state of California is putting together like a safer fire program. It's called the Safer Fire Program, right? I think the guidelines are supposed to be out in about 12 months from now, that way, and potentially then people, hopefully, if they do these mitigated. They do this mitigation, and the whole point of this is to make your property safer from wildfires, but also potentially to get reduced insurance rates right now. So what you brought up, though, was that, in order to get these rates, it sounds like this program, you're not going to have individual requirements, but the community is going to have requirements that way. So I just say this for like if there's any sort of council members or anyone listening to this podcast, that there's going to have to be like a fire contingency plan for that entire community, and then each individual property owner is going to have to take their mitigated risks. I mean, do their own mitigation in order to qualify for that lower insurance policy that way. So like it sounds like you guys were addressing that and looking at kind of like the regional community and then the actual property. But it's not going to be like, unfortunately, if one person just like takes like does what they need to do and the rest of the community doesn't, they probably won't qualify for that lower insurance rate. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
So
that's one of the big challenges around wildfire. In an earthquake or a tornado or a hurricane, the things I do don't really affect your risk as a homeowner and whether your home suffers damage. But in a wildfire, as we've seen in Paradise, the biggest predictor for a home being destroyed was whether another home within 50 feet was destroyed.
Right.
Only 5% of homes that had another house destroyed within 50 feet survived. And so the distance, the separation between homes is a key driver, and insurers right now don't feel like they have the data to be able to understand at a community level which communities are safe. Flip side to that, and I don't understand why it is right now, if you have any kind of acreage, like maybe a half acre of land, and your home is more than 50 feet away from a neighboring property, right now you basically completely control your own risk. And insurers, though, don't seem to recognize that. And those are the folks that are typically getting dropped when, if they did this work, they could be very protected.
Right. Yep. No, yeah, like I said, this is happening all the time in our industry, and my mom just completed hers last week. I had like my landscaping crew go out there and looking at like the fire hardening map. And I think this was like a couple days before we contacted you, and just kind of like, okay, this is what we need to do. And then she had her insurance person come out and walk around and be like, yeah, you did everything that you needed to do.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, she was able to keep her policy in place or whatnot like that. So yeah, no, it's really important that way. So. Obviously, you're very innovative because you're looking. Can you tell us a little bit like the technology you guys use? What role does technology play in your services, especially in terms of data collection and analysis that way?
Yeah. So when we got started, there was no software out there that really did the job of assessing wildfire risk, and so we started just doing it, with a camera, a smartphone, and building presentations, PDFs as reports. Those were taking a long time, and so. With my co-founder's background, and then a friend of mine who I've worked with, who's built services used by millions of people, we created a platform that runs inspections start to finish, and it includes all the different data layers. So we get high resolution aerial imagery, we get the slope, we calculate the slope on the property, we generate all the map layers for those different zones around the house and give that to the assessor. And then someone goes out, they've got all this data online or offline, and this has been used by other government entities that want to run programs. Contractors who do this kind of work are using the software that we also use for the inspections. So that's how we got started, and so it pairs with the smartphone app, and then we've got the back-end systems.
Wow.
Yeah, that's impressive.
On that note, you mentioned working with government agencies. Who have you started to work with? I know we've seen Madronus alongside a lot of County of Sonoma presentations. Is there other municipalities, counties, cities that you're working directly with, or is it a lot of direct with, I guess, property owners themselves?
It's really all of the above at this point. County of Sonoma is the first customer that we've been working with, and then we're in sales processes with several other counties that I can't name at the moment.
Sure.
We've received a lot of interest from Firewise groups, fire safe councils, insurance company, industry players, I should say, and also from contractors. But then we have folks who get that dreaded letter that we've heard a lot about lately from their insurance company, and they give us a call, and we're able to come out there usually the next day if we can and help get them covered.
Right. So can you just take us through that process? Let's say someone's had you out there.
Mm-hmm.
They now have the report where do they go from there? Like how can you help them implement those changes that way? So.
Yeah, so for many folks, they just want the assessment and they're good to go. They've got a long-term relationship with either a contractor or a landscaper, and they feel confident that they want to go ahead and do that. Usually,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but like being in the real estate industry,
mm-hmm.
usually that means they don't get it done for 5 years. Like usually they get the report and they put it aside.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage you to use Madronus and get through it, even if you have that nephew that's going to come out here and do it for you. We see that all the time. So yeah, just take the initiative, have Madronus do it for you. So anyway, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, we are often teased for creating the honey-do list, making life miserable for whoever does most of the work around the house. And then we follow up in a few months or a week and find, hey, is that project done yet?
Oh, that's good.
So we follow up.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
Okay.
And
cool.
so then for folks though who are maybe under a deadline, or who don't know where to start, or who just want to make sure it's done really well and that we're up to speed on all the latest products and materials that can really make a project look good and meet all of the insurance industry requirements. We offer a service that will design and manage the project. It starts at 10% of the work done. We cap that at about $2,000. So, we're not trying to make a ton of money on, going with expensive materials or trying to recommend things that you don't need. And then we have contractors that are licensed, vetted, who do great work on a wide range of homes, and we bring them in and we give them access to the data. They're able to generate an estimate just without having to show up on site. Mm-hmm. And then if the property owner is ready to proceed, we bring them in and we run the project. We're available to answer the questions, help provide pointers, and then at the end come back and document it all so that you got a final report to take to the insurance company.
That's awesome.
And with that final report, for anyone that's not familiar with an AB 38 inspection, it's from either the local jurisdiction, being city, fire department, or from CAL FIRE if you're in unincorporated Sonoma County. Is that something that you could take the Madronus report and they will look at in lieu of them coming out, or will they still have to come out in person?
So that is an area that's still evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you we've been approached by many property owners who want to make sure that they're going to pass the AB 38 inspection. We're very familiar with all of those rules, and we can definitely advise a customer. At this point, the only entities who are able to do those assessments are, as you mentioned, actually registered professional foresters can also do them.
Oh.
And CAL FIRE is rolling out a program for qualified nonprofits to offer these assessments as well. So and they have the freedom in the future to open that program up. So there'll be training and credential, and we're talking with them about how we might be able to, go bigger on this. We've heard from many people that this is a barrier to the home sales process, and sellers want to give buyers confidence that there's not going to be a ton of work after the transaction closes.
Yeah, no, let's just clarify that for people listening. We talk about this where I really think the future, where we're at is just like you get like a home inspection or something of that nature. As insurance becomes more expensive and that much more topical, I think this will become the standard that way where, hey, look, we've done these remediation, or here's what you need to do or something of that nature. And then it becomes part of the negotiation process. Pretty much every transaction, I can see that happening in properties that are in the higher fire risk areas that way.
And certainly from an insurance standpoint, I forget the statistic we looked at the other day. I think 68% of escrows being canceled right now in the state of California are due to insurance. Mm-hmm. So if you can head that off the bat with the mitigation, it just makes things so much smoother.
Yeah. It's scary to see what's happening right now, and I've heard of sellers offering 2 years of insurance, coverage,
right,
and it's coming out at something like $25,000 is kind of the amount that sellers are having to give to buyers to
Right. I mean, did you just have an $8,000, like your client had like an $8,000 policy on like just a little home? You know, I mean, like, it's crazy that way. Have you had any interaction with like insurance companies, or your clients have, and like had positive responses over this? Like anything of that? Which I know that's still like an evolving, a lot of moving pieces there that way. So.
A lot of moving pieces. I would say we're in the middle of many of those conversations right now.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen Allstate and Farmers send out pretty stern letters to a lot of their policyholders. From what I understand, something like 16,000 people in California received those letters in the last month. Mm-hmm. And so that's kicking off a whole bunch of inbound calls for us, and we're still working through those projects. We have had customers take our assessments and, hey, this is what I paid for, and take that to an insurance underwriter, and depending on the insurer, they'll, like your mother's experience, they'll say, yep, that looks good. And we've also been able to go back and forth with our customers and act as their agent with the insurance company and kind of negotiate, well, is this really what you care about? Or, what about this? And could we design this in a way that meets their goals but saves our customers from having to completely redo a redwood deck that they paid, a lot of money for 3 years ago.
Right.
That's huge. I mean, so many people they don't even know where to start.
With
talking to the insurance companies.
Yeah, that's
how to speak their language, right?
Totally. I mean, one of my clients had to install a water shutoff. They needed added security, and then their deductible was $32,000. So
wow.
Yeah, that we're seeing that's what we're seeing is like these standards where like you have to put in security systems, and really I think it's just a way to kill the policy. It's like, hey, let's make sure let's try to add up the cost to these people, and hopefully one of them can't afford it, so we can have justification to kill the policy that way. So like I know that in Sonoma County we have a certain set of requirements. If I don't expect you to know this question, I just have to throw it out there. Like I know it's like there's a lot of moving pieces about what the requirements are going to be. Do you have any idea? Like are the requirements right now? There's like that 5 foot of defensible space. I've been on so many seminars like trying to figure out like do they increase that slightly to 10 feet? Like I know that's a lot of moving pieces. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but do you have any insight to like where that's going? Because that's what we're trying to figure out is like what exactly are going to be the requirements, and and then like I sit on this seminar with the California State Department of Insurance, and it's like I still don't get the answer. Yeah. So I'm sure that I'm speaking your language now, right? So do you have any insight about like what the heck's going on with that?
You mentioned earlier there's so many players in this space trying to bring solutions because it's such a compelling problem that we're all facing. There's kind of, I'll call 3 different bodies, or maybe 4. One is the insurance industry, and they are regulated locally in California, but there's groups out there like the Institute for Business and Home Safety. It's a nonprofit research arm that a number of the largest carriers in California contribute money to, and then they have research programs that cover wildfire, they cover hail and wind, and they have programs that, hey, if this is what you're trying to protect against, this is the standard that you need to build a roof to. And they have this thing called the Wildfire Prepared Home Standard. And that includes this 0 to 5 non-combustible zone 0, as we're calling it. And they measure it from the very outer edge of the home, which includes the roof line, as well as any attached decks. So the way to think about this is your deck is part of your house. Any attached structures, that becomes part of the house, and now your 5 foot zone extends from that. And it's the furthest point of the roof line or the wall. California's, the next group is like the Department of Insurance that has created its own program called Safer from Wildfires.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, and the IBHS one's called Wildfire Prepared Home. I can't remember if I mentioned that. So Safer from Wildfires almost completely overlaps with the Wildfire Prepared Home Standard. A couple differences are that the Wildfire Prepared Home Standard requires that you do all of a certain set of mitigations in order to qualify, and there's 2 different tiers. And the Safer from Wildfires says you can do any of these things, and the insurance company has to give you a small discount, basically.
I see.
So you could do just one.
You could just do one.
I see.
The science backs up IBHS.
Right.
You've got to do
Obviously.
a minimum set of things if you want to protect against embers. You got to do another minimum set of things if you want to protect against radiant heat that's going to crack windows and ignite siding at 50 feet of distance. So then Safer from Wildfires is the California Department of Insurance Group's framework, and they define that zone 0. It's less precise. And then you've got the regulatory entity, which is CAL FIRE, the Board of Forestry, and that comes down to the local level as well, like Sonoma County.
Right.
And they've had many rules in place. That's where our building codes are for energy efficiency, and now also Chapter 7A, which is the wildfire area building standard. And then they've got the defensible space rules that have been in place for a very long time.
Right.
And that does not currently include a 0 to 5 requirement.
Okay.
But they have started that process. There was a whole effort to do it. A committee came out with a draft, and then it got nixed because people just weren't comfortable with it, and there was concerns around how it would be received. Then they just started a whole nother process to try and find that.
I see. So it's even more.
And that's not going to finalize until 2026, most likely.
So we really hopefully at some point we need some type of standardization, and then we can start figuring this out a little bit. But until we have that, there's always going to be this confusion that way. It seems like.
My insider track is it's the Wildfire Prepared Home, IBHS. Nobody can compel the insurance companies to be in business in California, and if that's the standard that they're really lining up on, which 70% of the insurers in California are, that's where I would send people to focus their attention.
Okay. It really sounds like the Safer from Wildfires is more about the insurance commission trying to figure out a way to make insurance less expensive than really address fire risk.
Yeah, you would think, why wouldn't you uphold to the highest standards?
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see.
The first one you mentioned totally seems
why aren't we going off that, right? Like going off the strict standards if we really want to solve this problem.
No comment. You'll have to invite the Department of Insurance on here
sure.
and get their take on it.
Yeah, no, I get it. Cool. So what are some of the biggest challenges you faced through this process?
Yeah.
So, I would assume dealing with governments and stuff like that and everything, well, probably what you just talked about, right? All these different requirements that way. But what are some of the other challenges you face that way?
Yeah, so aside from making sense of all the different, rules and programs out there, I think the biggest challenge is folks kind of understanding and becoming educated that it's not just the defensible space, it's also what I can do to my house and the role that plays in reducing your actual risk. Like, set aside insurance. Like, I think most people realize even if you do have insurance, losing your home is a catastrophic event. It ruins your life for many years. It's a long road to rebuild. Hopefully you've got enough money to make it happen.
Right.
And of course you've lost, a lifetime of memories and hopefully no members of your family. But so if you care about reducing your risk, you've got two, kind of knobs that we talk about, and getting folks to understand that you can reduce the risk by managing the vegetation, but then you can also increase your home's ability to withstand risk by hardening the structure, as we call it, doing the wildfire improvements that we've mentioned. So that's education is a big part of it. And then getting the workforce who's qualified, who knows what they're doing, who will show up, who are above board on all this and do a good job with it. I think that's a big challenge anytime we're trying to get a building project done. And lastly, dealing with the evolving kind of industry players and standards within the insurance space is definitely a challenge. I've got Allstate today, but depending on who you talk to, from when you start the project to when you finish it, there's no real requirement that they honor whatever they say.
Right.
And that might only be valid for another year, and then they come back and they've moved the goalposts on us again.
Right.
And that's the worst part of it.
Sure.
I would say.
Sure. Just kind of jumping back a little bit to the fire hardening of the home. It seems like a lot of the things that people can do aren't like huge ticket items.
That's right.
Like I just want to go through that because so people aren't intimidated. It's like, maybe upgrading certain type of vents, or like we talked about fencing and things like that. But potentially there could be like, siding or something like that, if you have old siding or garage door. But a lot of them, you can do a lot of the work. They're not huge ticket items that way. So people
Weather
hopefully,
stripping on a garage
yeah,
door.
yeah, don't put your head in the sand because like, oh shoot, I don't want to like, open up my pocketbook to like a huge renovation project. Like that's often not the case in this situation. Just you guys have some great diagrams. You sent us a presentation, so I'm just looking at one of them, and that's what it says is that most of you don't know you can reduce risk by 75% for $10,000 or less. And again, this is something that like the real estate industry, I feel like we should be addressing transactionally. We should be looking at this now, like every time through, and so that should be addressed up front. So if you're looking to buy a home, you should be thinking about this. If you already own a home, realize that it's not the end of the world, but like a lot of these things you can do are not big ticket items that way. So.
What would you say is the most, not overlooked, but most common thing that you see can be addressed so easily and quickly from all the homes that you've inspected? I know that's probably...
Pick one.
Right.
I think it's the most effective, but also probably something that is hardest for us to do, but could be done in a weekend.
Uh-huh.
And that is this zone 0, this non-combustible.
Right.
And, we've got attachment to rose bushes or that favorite shrub. And in many cases, it's just about, we're going to move this. We're just going to move this to the other side of that walkway. But then what do you put back in its place, right? And I think that we're going to start to see some really cool designs and coming out soon.
Uh-huh.
But, small rocks and larger rocks and that kind of thing, if you are... We'll see how the standards evolve and whether like some small potted plants are allowed.
Uh-huh.
But consider putting some potted plants in there, but just don't put them near windows. And if your insurer eventually comes back, then you might have to move them.
Right.
But at least they're in a pot that can be moved.
Sure.
So that is probably the most impactful, least costly, and but toughest to do because of how we've designed our home and to reflect our personality and our tastes.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. And I think like people just don't like change too. I mean, the reality is that this isn't like really life altering. Like living like this for a couple of years, you never even think about it again. With your trees trimmed back a little bit more and things of that nature. Like people just don't like change that way. But it's really important to do. So.
And as you said, during the home buying process, that's when both parties are least attached to the house. The seller wants to increase their curb appeal.
Right.
The buyer doesn't have an attachment to that place yet.
Uh-huh.
And it is the ideal point for this kind of work to happen. And so any agents out there, brokers, I think it should really be part of the conversation with the seller, getting ready to sell.
Yep. And the buyer too. If you're representing a buyer's agent on our side, you should inform the buyer like, hey, look, as you mentioned, insurance, like you can sign a policy and then 2 weeks later they can drop you.
That's exactly
so like, you have to know like potentially what can happen that way. That's an important conversation to have on both sides to figure things out right up front. Is there anything else that you'd like for people to know about Madronus or your services or anything that way? So anything we haven't covered?
New technology coming.
Yeah.
New technology
cool features,
coming.
anything like that. Yeah, anything that way.
Yeah, we're really excited about what these supercomputers in our pockets can do, and being able to get the measurements for these projects just with doing a video or a walk around kind of scan. We're seeing some really interesting things there, and but
I'm curious, like, are you guys using like the LiDAR? Exactly how are you guys doing it? What are you?
Yeah, the LiDAR in these devices makes them really powerful and capable of getting the information and creating even like the 3D models. So many of the real estate transactions do that now.
We're the only brokerage that has our own in-house marketing team, including like 3D modeling and stuff like that.
Very
so
cool.
That's why I was like, hey, using LiDAR or what are you using that way? So we have our Matterport
when those
cameras
exist already, being able to work with those models that are already being captured as part of it. Some other cool things are, training machine learning computer vision algorithms to recognize features so that we can do that community scale assessment and give insurers the confidence that hey, enough homes in this area are hardened up,
Right.
and you can write with confidence.
Okay.
No one of them is going to be able to get that information, but if we're able to kind of create a data source for it, that I think will also help bring insurers back into the communities and to write more policies.
Cool. That's very cool.
So there's the website itself that you can go on. That's what I was playing around with putting in addresses. You mentioned there's an app as well.
Yeah, so right now we have an app that is just for the inspectors.
Oh, okay.
But we're looking at what could that experience look like for a property owner who just wants to spend an afternoon or maybe even 30 minutes downloading something, walking around their house and getting educated.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that feature. So those interested in your services, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best
the
way to get a
website?
hold of us is website. So Madronus, a slightly different spelling, MADRONUS.com. They can also give us a call, 707-899-0800, or hit me up, LinkedIn, Ivan@Madronus.com, and we'll get in touch.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us today. If this is all new to you, it's not going to be much longer if you own a home. Every homeowner is going to be dealing with this in some capacity. So Ivan, thank you so much for coming on. This has been an awesome podcast. I'm always like, you never know how podcasts are going to go or like what the guest is like. Great information. This is really needed, and it actually like you kind of like fit all the pieces together and it kind of makes sense. You know, like how do we accomplish this? You know, so this is like the first time I've actually heard of like something that like fits the puzzle of this insurance fire problem that way. So thank you very much for coming on, and maybe we can have you on in the future as you guys grow that way. So
Love to. Thanks for having me.
cool.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ivan.
If you guys like this, please hit like and subscribe so you can see future episodes. See you guys later.